Hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome to a Thursday Collection Connection, where we're playing that game that's just an excuse to talk about records. Today we're going to be forging a connection between Sublime's 1994 album, Robin the Hood, and the 1986 debut from the Mighty Lemon Drops called Happy Head. And that's all coming up right after we unravel the mystery of the connection between Fishbone's The Reality of My Surroundings and Sublime's Robin the Hood. And that connection is that they repeat song titles on the album. Sublime has Pool Shark in a couple of different variations, and the Rally Soliloquies Part 1, 2, and 3. But I think mostly Pool Shark. And Fishbone has If I Was I'd done 4 or 5 times on that album. So that was the connection, and it was successfully guessed once again by Murdoch from Murdoch's Music Minute. Murdoch's currently going through, I think, a Who phase, and he's talked about a couple of Who records, I think, now here in the recent past. So you can check out his channel at Murdoch's Music Minute. And with that, on with the show. Alright, so Eric talked about Sublime's Robin the Hood. It is strange to me that there is a world in which this was ever Sublime's latest album. It takes sort of everything that bothered me about the Fishbone album, the kind of scattershot, half-baked ideas, and makes a whole album out of it without even really putting in hardly anything that feels like a finished song to me. It feels very much like the kind of thing that a record company would put together after an artist's death to kind of clean out the vault, scrape together any recordings that they could. And in fact, they did do this with Sublime after Brad Knoll passed away, which he did even before their big selling album, their self-titled 1996 album came out, and yet he was still alive when this was issued as the follow-up to 40 Ounces to Freedom. I know Eric has at times called 40 Ounces to Freedom his favorite album ever. I don't know if he says that now, but I know it's still amongst his favorite records. And Robin the Hood has the feel of something meant for a hardcore fan, to me anyway. The rambling tracks of Raleigh, whatever his name is, the name's on the cover there. I feel like even if you find it funny once, it stops being funny thereafter. That's the problem with some humor on record, is that it stops being funny pretty quickly. And I don't know, the whole thing is just so scattershot. I guess the only band that I think of is They Might Be Giants, that has that's sort of their MO, is to kind of hit an idea and get out, and that results in many a short song. But even their albums tend to top out at 17, 18, 19 tracks, whereas this one had 22 tracks. And I tried to think, one of the ways that I tried to connect was an album that had that many tracks on it, but because the final track has some unlisted hidden tracks within it, and at least per my understanding from what I read, I don't own the album, the different versions, the original Skunk Records version had an additional song in the hidden tracks at the end that was taken out for the Gasoline Alley version. So I couldn't even say definitively if it had 22 or 23 or 24 songs on it, because different variations seem to have a different number of songs on it, both of which had hidden tracks. So as unusual as a 22 song track list is, I couldn't even really go with that, but that is an indication of just kind of how short these little bits of song are. So I didn't have a lot of time to make a connection, and certainly not a ton of time to research that connection. But those were some of the thoughts that ended up falling by the wayside, just to give you an idea of the thought that goes into these things and trying to come up with a fairly unique connection. And that brings us to the connection that I did make for today's episode, and that is going to be Mighty Lemon Drops' Happy Head. This isn't an album that I've had for a long time. It's actually in a little LP sort of replica sleeve and came out of this cherry red box set, which combines their 3 albums for Chrysalis in the 80s and appends it with some bonus material, as well as a couple of extra discs of live and demo type things. The kind of thing that Robin the Hood album feels like to me. But ironically, this version has 22 tracks on it, but that's not the connection. It takes the follow-up, which was the Out of Hand EP, and chucks those songs onto the end of this particular edition. But I never had Happy Head back in the day, back when they were releasing records. I bought the 2 following albums, Laughter and World Without End. And World Without End contains Inside Out, which happens to be one of my favorite singles, favorite songs of all time. Just a perfect little pop gem. But their first album is a little scrappier, a little more garagey, and kind of takes influence from garage bands of the 60s through sort of, mod bands, bands like The Jam and The Smiths, and especially Echo and the Bunnymen, and Julian Cope's first significant band, The Teardrop Explodes. Kind of shares that sort of herky-jerky, the thing that you want to dance to and not move your shoulders to, like that. That kind of music. And it sounds very modern rock, very college rock of the time. I know that they were featured on the legendary C86 compilation, and the album, when I put it on, it's not bad to listen to. It's interesting, there's not a lot that sort of stands out initially. It's well put together, but doesn't really quite crest that hill into something memorable for me yet. But maybe the more I familiarize myself with it, maybe individual tracks will start to stand out. I think Something Happens, which is near the end of the running time, was something that kind of made me go, okay, I can see something happening there. But without doing a lot of research, this was an English band out of the West Midlands, a 4-piece. You can see the 4 guys on the cover there, and I don't remember any of their names. And I think they sort of got accused over time of maybe a little bit of genre hopping and less making the music that they had to make and more trying to make the music that they thought would sell. Their sound definitely got cleaner by the time of Laughter, was much more produced, less garagey, more sort of U2 big country, big songs, anthemic songs that I still quite enjoy. I like several of the tracks off of Laughter, and I think by their next album, Sound, which is not included, not rounded up on here, they had sort of maybe gone into a Manchester kind of sound that, for the most part, kind of put an end to the band. I think they released one more record after that, but they never really, smashed through walls or charts anywhere, save for the U.S. modern rock tracks. Not with this album, not with Happy Head, but with World Without End and Laughter. This one, as early, as an early indication of who they were, what they were planning to do, seems promising. There's a lot of promise to me in this album, but it doesn't quite deliver on sort of memorable bangers to me, at least through my first few listens. This came out in 2022, this particular box set. It was something I had waited on for a very long time, just to have remasters of those late 80s albums that I did already own, and this just happened to be included. I was happy to have it, and as I said, it's fine to listen to. It doesn't make me cringe. It doesn't, make me want to switch it off. but it doesn't necessarily stand apart. You know, it doesn't seem to quite have a voice yet. It's more just kind of jams of a style that just sort of fit the textbook definition of sort of indie pop or indie rock in the late 80s. That never quite fully landed, you know, but it's still welcome. I like that style of music, and I've enjoyed listening to it a couple times here, but having to turn it all around so quickly really wasn't a chance to have a deep dive into the Mighty Lemon Drops. I'm sure there's some literature in here, a booklet that could have illuminated what I had to say a little bit, but I didn't have time to read it, so sorry about that. Maybe I'll have a chance to talk about some Mighty Lemon Drops with a little more time to prepare for it in the future, but until then, you can look for Eric's response to this video. I keep forgetting in the new format to kind of lay out what we do. I play this game with my brother, Plastic Eric, on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel, and every Monday he shows an album, every Thursday I show an album, and the connective tissue is that the albums have to, in some way, relate to each other, and we ask you to try and figure out what that connection is. If you have a guess, leave it down in the comments. First right answer gets a shout out. Eric is sort of semi-keeping score. I'm not keeping score at all. So we're just looking for that engagement. So maybe do all the video things, you know, kind of like. I would love a comment. Whether or not you have a connection, guess. Tell me what you think about the Mighty Lemon Drops. Or tell me why Sublime's Robin the Hood is better than I think it is. Because I think that they're self-titled, which I don't have 40 Ounces to Freedom on the going back to the Sublime. I don't have it, even though I know that it's a favorite of Eric's. I think that the posthumously released Sublime album after the passing of Bradley Nowell, which did chart. It's where I really kind of heard about them, because they got, that is the album that got the radio play. I think that's a solid album, but it's just weird to me that Robin the Hood is what they chose to follow that up with. It just seems very, very half-baked to me. Weirdly, AllMusic, and I did do a little bit of research, AllMusic likes Robin the Hood better than 40 Ounces to Freedom. Go figure. Didn't do a whole lot for me. There's some decent musical ideas, but they hit almost too fast. A bunch of things that are under a minute long. The recorded rants of the guy that don't do anything for me, just kind of annoy me. But if you have an idea of the connection between Robin the Hood and Happy Head, and it is specific to this album, I'm not sure about Sublime, but it is a visual connection, and put your guess in the comments along with your thoughts about the Mighty Lemon Drops or Sublime. And with that, I've said my piece, so I thank you for watching. Bye-bye.